November 24th, 1950, Thanksgiving Day. The 1st Marine Division and elements of the 7th Infantry Division are advancing north toward the Chosin Reservoir in North Korea. The temperature is already well below zero. Snow covers everything. The Marines are confident. The war seems almost won. General MacArthur has promised everyone home by Christmas. The North Korean army is shattered. Chinese intervention seems unlikely despite warnings from intelligence. Major General Oliver Smith commands the 1st Marine Division. He's a careful, methodical officer, the opposite of MacArthur's flamboyant optimism, and Smith is worried. His division is strung out along a single narrow mountain road, 78 miles from the port of Hungnam to the Chosin Reservoir. One road, mountains on both sides, perfect terrain for ambush. His Marines are advancing into what could be a trap, and intelligence keeps reporting Chinese forces in the area. Lots of them. Smith voices his concerns to 10th Corps Commander General Edward Almond. Almond dismisses them. The Chinese aren't here in force. A few scattered units maybe. Nothing the Marines can't handle. Push north, take the reservoir, link up with 8th Army on the western side of Korea, win the war. Smith doesn't argue, he's a professional, but he prepares for the worst. He establishes supply dumps along the road, builds an airstrip at Hagar-Rurai, positions units to cover the route. If things go wrong, he wants options. Things are about to go very wrong. Welcome to the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. 17 days of combat in the worst conditions imaginable. Temperatures hitting 40 below zero. 15,000 Marines and soldiers surrounded by over 120,000 Chinese troops. A fighting withdrawal through 78 miles of mountains while under constant attack. The frozen hell that became the defining moment of the Korean War and one of the greatest fighting retreats in military history. This is the complete story. Not just what happened, but why it happened, how the Marines survived, and what it cost. 30 minutes to understand 17 days that changed everything. September 21st, 1953. North Korean fighter pilot Senior Lieutenant No Kum-sok climbs into his MiG-15 at Sunan Airfield near Pyongyang. He's 21 years old. He's flown over 100 combat missions. And today, he's going to do something that will change his life forever and shock both the American and communist worlds. He's going to defect. Fly his MiG to South Korea. Land at an American airbase, and hand over the Soviet Union's most advanced fighter jet to the United States. The Americans have been desperate to get their hands on a MiG-15. It's the fighter that's been dominating MiG Alley. Soviet-built, fast, maneuverable, better than American jets in some ways, but no one's been able to examine one intact. Every MiG shot down is destroyed in the crash. Every captured airfield is stripped before UN forces arrive. The MiG-15 remains a mystery, its capabilities, its weaknesses, unknown. No Kum-sok is about to solve that mystery, and he doesn't even know about the $100,000 reward the Americans offered for exactly this. He's defecting because he hates communism, because his father was executed by the North Korean regime, because he wants freedom. The money will be a shocking bonus, but freedom is what drives him. Welcome to one of the most daring defections of the Cold War. A 21-year-old pilot stealing the Soviet Union's most prized fighter and flying it to enemy territory. No warning, no advance contact, just one man, one plane, and one desperate flight to freedom. This is No Kum-sok's story, and it's one of the most remarkable acts of individual courage in the Korean War. The MiG-15 was a game-changer when it appeared over Korea. Soviet-designed, it could outclimb American F-80 Shooting Stars. It could fight F-86 Sabres on nearly equal terms. Chinese and North Korean pilots flying MiGs shot down dozens of American aircraft. The jet age of aerial combat was born in MiG Alley, and the MiG-15 was the star of that show. American intelligence desperately wanted one, wanted to know how it worked, what made it so effective, what weaknesses could be exploited, but getting one seemed impossible, until No Kum-sok decided to hand them one on a silver platter. No Kum-sok was born in 1932 in what would become North Korea. His family was relatively well off. His father was a factory manager, not communist, not political, just a businessman trying to survive. When the communists took over North Korea in 1948, that became dangerous. The North Korean regime under Kim Il-sung was paranoid about anyone with wealth or education. They were considered class enemies, potential counter-revolutionaries. No's father was arrested in 1949 on fabricated charges, accused of being a capitalist sympathizer. He was executed without trial. No Kum-sok was 17 when he watched his father disappear into the regime's prison system and never return. That's when No decided he hated the communist system, but he couldn't show it. Showing anti-communist sentiment meant death, so he pretended, joined the Communist Youth League, said the right things, attended the right meetings, played the role of loyal communist, all while planning to escape the first chance he got. He became expert at hiding his true feelings, smiling while seething inside, pledging loyalty while planning betrayal. It was the only way to survive in North Korea if you didn't believe in the system. When the Korean War started in June 1950, No was 18. The regime needed pilots. The Soviet Union was training North Korean pilots to fly the new MiG-15 fighters. No volunteered, not because he believed in the cause, because pilots had access to planes, and planes could fly to South Korea. It was a long-term plan, risky. He'd have to survive combat, survive the political scrutiny, wait for the perfect moment. But it was his only hope of escape. He was sent to China for training, spent months learning to fly the MiG-15. The Soviets were secretive about the plane. North Korean pilots weren't told much about its systems or capabilities. They were taught to fly it, taught basic combat tactics, but not given deep technical knowledge. That was reserved for Soviet pilots who actually flew many of the MiGs in combat, pretending to be Chinese or North Korean. Still, No learned everything he could, listened, observed, memorized. He was a good student, because his life might depend on knowing his aircraft intimately. By 1952, No was flying combat missions over Korea. He was good, a natural pilot. He flew over 100 missions, never shot down an American plane. He later admitted he avoided shooting to kill when possible. He didn't want to murder Americans who were fighting the same regime he hated, but he couldn't refuse to fly. That would mean execution. So he flew, went through the motions, avoided hitting American planes when he could claim engine trouble or bad aim. And he waited for his chance. For 3 years he waited, pretended loyalty, planned betrayal. Defecting in a MiG-15 wasn't simple. The planes were closely guarded. Soviet advisors watched everything. North Korean political officers monitored pilots for signs of disloyalty. Every flight was planned, every mission supervised. You couldn't just take off and fly south. You'd be shot down by your own side before you crossed the front lines. The North Korean Air Defense Network was designed partly to keep their own pilots from defecting. They knew the risk. They took precautions. No needed a perfect opportunity, a flight where he could break away without immediate suspicion, where he could get enough distance before anyone realized what was happening, and where he could navigate to a U.S. airfield without getting shot down by American planes who'd think he was attacking. The challenges were enormous, but No was patient. He'd waited 3 years. He could wait for the right moment. The armistice was signed in July 1953. The war was over, but North Korean pilots continued training flights. No was still flying regularly, and with the war over, security was slightly relaxed. Not much, but slightly. Combat operations had ceased. The urgency and paranoia decreased marginally. That was his window. If he was going to do this, it had to be soon, before security tightened again, before he was reassigned. Before something changed that would close his opportunity forever. He studied maps, memorized the location of U.S. airfields in South Korea. Kimpo was closest to the border, about 30 miles south of the demarcation line. If he could get to Kimpo, he'd be safe. But he had to fly low to avoid radar, navigate without instruments, couldn't use radio for obvious reasons, and land without crashing. MiG-15s were difficult to land, high landing speed, tricky handling. Many pilots crashed during landing. If No crashed trying to defect, he'd die. But staying in North Korea meant living under the regime that killed his father. That was worse than death. September came. No was still flying training missions. Solo flights were occasionally authorized for experienced pilots. That's what he needed, a solo flight. No wingman to report him. No formation to notice when he broke away. Just him and his MiG alone in the sky, free to make his choice. On September 20th, he learned he'd be flying solo the next day. Routine training, standard route. It was perfect. It was time. He didn't sleep well that night. Tomorrow he'd either be free or dead. There was no middle ground. If the North Koreans caught him before he crossed the border, they'd shoot him down. If the Americans didn't understand he was defecting, they'd shoot him down. If he crashed on landing, he'd die. The odds weren't good, but they were better than staying. He'd made his decision 3 years ago when his father was executed. Tomorrow he'd execute the plan. Morning, September 21st. No Kumsak walks to his MiG-15 like it's any other training flight. He's calm, shows no nervousness, can't let anyone suspect. He climbs into the cockpit, straps in, starts the engine. The MiG's Klimov engine roars to life. He goes through pre-flight checks, everything normal. Tower clears him for takeoff. He acknowledges, rolls onto the runway, throttles up. The MiG accelerates, rotation speed. He pulls back on the stick. The fighter lifts off. He's airborne. So far, everything is routine. No takes off heading north. His assigned route. He climbs to altitude, flies the pattern he's supposed to fly. Soviet and North Korean radar are tracking him. As long as he stays on course, nobody suspects anything. He flies north for about 10 minutes, long enough to get away from the immediate vicinity of the airfield. Long enough that when he turns, he'll have a head start before anyone can react. Then, when he's far enough from the airfield that they can't immediately see him, he makes his move. He turns south, points the MiG directly at South Korea. Full throttle and dives for the deck. He drops to low altitude, maybe 100 feet above the ground. At that height, radar has trouble tracking him. Hills and terrain block the signal. He's flying on visual navigation, following valleys, rivers, landmarks he memorized from maps. The MiG is fast, over 600 miles per hour at low altitude. The landscape blurs past. He's committed now. No turning back. Either he makes it to Kimpo, or he dies trying. Back at Sunan Airfield, controllers realize something's wrong. No's radar track disappeared. He's not responding to radio calls. They scramble other MiGs to look for him. Is he crashed? Did his engine fail, or is he defecting? If he's defecting, they need to stop him. Orders go out, find him. If you can't force him to return, shoot him down. But No has a head start, and he's flying low and fast. The MiG searching for him can't find him. He's threading through valleys, using terrain to hide. It's dangerous flying. One mistake and he crashes into a hillside at 600 miles per hour. But No is a good pilot, and he's motivated. Freedom is ahead. Death is behind. He flies like his life depends on it, because it does. He crosses the front lines, the demarcation line between North and South Korea. Now he's in South Korea, U.S. air defense territory. New problem. American radar picks up a MiG-15 flying south at high speed. They assume it's an attack, maybe a reconnaissance run, maybe a defector, but they can't take chances. Air raid sirens sound at Kimpo. F-86 Sabres scramble to intercept the unidentified MiG. No has gone from being hunted by North Koreans to being hunted by Americans. And he can't radio them to explain. His radio only has North Korean frequencies. The Americans wouldn't understand Korean anyway. He's on his own. No sees Kimpo ahead. The runway, American aircraft on the ground. He's almost there. But he also sees F-86s climbing toward him. If they think he's attacking, they'll shoot him down. He has seconds to make them understand he's not a threat. He lowers his landing gear. Universal signal in aviation: I'm landing, not attacking. The Sabres see the gear down. They hold fire. They're confused, but they don't shoot. They follow him, watching, ready to engage if he does anything hostile. But No is committed to landing. He lines up on the runway, too fast. MiG-15s land at over 150 miles per hour. The runway at Kimpo is relatively short for jets. He's going to overshoot. He knows it. But he can't go around. The sabers might interpret that as an attack and shoot. He has to land now. He touches down, hard. The MiG bounces, touches again, brakes hard, maximum braking. The runway end is approaching fast. He's not going to stop in time. The MiG rolls off the end of the runway into the dirt and grass beyond. Skids, dust, and debris fly. The fighter slews sideways, finally stops. No Comstock sits in the cockpit for a moment. He's alive. He's in South Korea. He's free. He did it. American troops surround the MiG within minutes. Jeeps and trucks racing across the field. Soldiers jump out with weapons drawn. They have no idea who this pilot is or why he just landed here. Could be a defector, could be a trap, could be a pilot who got lost and accidentally landed at the wrong airfield. They approach cautiously. No climbs out of the cockpit slowly, hands up. Non-threatening, he doesn't speak English, can't explain, tries to communicate through gestures, points to himself, points south. Tries to convey, I came here on purpose. I'm not attacking, I'm defecting. Finally, a Korean-American soldier arrives who speaks Korean. No speaks rapidly, explains in Korean. I'm defecting, I hate communism, I want freedom, I came here voluntarily, don't shoot me. The translator relays this to the American officers. They're stunned. A North Korean pilot just delivered a MiG-15. The intelligence value is incredible. This is the plane they've been trying to get for 3 years. Now it's sitting on their runway, intact, flyable, barely damaged from the rough landing. They can examine it, test it, learn all its secrets. No is taken immediately for debriefing. Military intelligence officers arrive within hours. Days of questioning begin. Who are you? Why did you defect? Is this a trick? Are you a spy? Tell us everything about your background, everything about the MiG, everything about North Korean air operations. No answers everything. He's cooperative, eager to prove he's genuine. He explains his background, his father's execution, his 3 years of planning, his hatred of the regime, his desire for freedom. The interrogators run every check they can, polygraph tests, background verification through South Korean intelligence. Comparing his story to known facts, everything checks out. He's genuine. He's not a spy. He's a defector who just handed the U.S. military its biggest intelligence coup of the Korean War, maybe the biggest of the entire Cold War so far. Then they tell him about the reward. The U.S. Air Force, through a program called Operation Moolah, had offered $100,000 to any communist pilot who defected with a MiG-15. Leaflets were dropped over North Korea. Radio broadcasts announced the offer. The hope was that financial incentive plus the promise of freedom would convince someone to defect. No never saw the leaflets, never heard the broadcasts. The North Korean regime suppressed that information carefully. Pilots were kept away from areas where leaflets were dropped. Radio frequencies were jammed. No defected for freedom. Now he's getting $100,000 too. He can't believe it. In 1953, $100,000 is an enormous amount of money, equivalent to over $1 million today. No is suddenly wealthy. More importantly, he's free. The Americans take the MiG to Okinawa for testing. American test pilots fly it. Engineers take it apart, study every system, every component. They learn its strengths, excellent climb rate, good maneuverability at high altitude, powerful armament. They learn its weaknesses, poor visibility from cockpit due to heavy framing, vulnerable to high-speed diving attacks that exploit its control issues at high speed, limited ammunition capacity of only about 5 seconds of fire. This information changes U.S. fighter tactics immediately. Now they know how to fight MiGs more effectively. American pilots are briefed on the MiG's weaknesses. Tactics are adjusted to exploit them. No's defection saves American lives in future conflicts where MiGs are encountered. No Kumsok doesn't stay in South Korea. The U.S. offers him asylum in America. He needs a new identity for security. The North Korean regime would kill him if they could. They've already declared him a traitor, issued death threats. His family in North Korea, if any survived, would be punished for his betrayal. That's how the regime works. Collective punishment, but No can't change what he's done. And he wouldn't if he could. He chose freedom. He'd make the same choice again. In 1954, he arrives in the United States. New name, Kenneth Rowe. Kenneth because it sounds American.